It was one of those crisp autumn mornings when the air carried a bite that woke the senses and the streets of the small town of Brooksville were just beginning to stir with life, the golden sun spilling through thinning trees, their leaves scattered like confetti across cracked sidewalks, and in the center of town sat Hank's Diner, a squat brick building with wide glass windows fogged by the steam of sizzling bacon and pancakes flipping on the griddle, the kind of place where locals gathered before work and farmers stopped after chores, where laughter and gossip were served alongside coffee that never seemed to run out. Inside the diner that morning, Marcus Hayes and Elijah Carter, two men bound by years of service and brotherhood forged in the fire of war, stepped through the door, their boots heavy but their stride casual, carrying the kind of presence that made people turn and look without knowing why, because both men, though dressed in simple jackets and jeans, radiated a quiet authority, a calm strength, the aura of soldiers who had faced too much to ever be ordinary again. And as the doorbell jingled behind them, conversation lulled just for a second before resuming, the smell of maple syrup and grease wafting around them as they chose a booth near the window, their voices low and warm as they joked about the old days. Marcus, tall, broad-shouldered, with deep brown skin and a beard flecked with silver though he was only 38, had been a platoon sergeant in Afghanistan, a man who had led his men through ambushes and midnight raids, a man who carried in his heart the memory of every soldier he'd lost, and though he worked now as a high school history teacher, molding young minds and trying to give them the wisdom war had carved into him, he sometimes caught himself staring out the window during class, remembering desert nights under foreign skies, the rattle of gunfire, the smell of dust and sweat, and the weight of command. Beside him sat Elijah Carter, 37, leaner but wiry strong, his skin dark and his hair cropped short, a mechanic now who spent his days fixing cars in a small garage on the edge of town, but in another life had been a combat medic who had patched up wounds under fire, who had steadied his trembling hands on battlefields where chaos raged and lives balanced on seconds, who had once carried a fellow soldier on his back 3 miles through enemy fire, earning a silver star he never boasted about, and though he laughed easily and carried a calm demeanor, his eyes sometimes betrayed the storms inside, the memories of screams, blood, and the weight of survival that never quite left. Together, Marcus and Elijah represented something larger than themselves, the unbreakable bond of men who had bled together, survived together, and carried one another through the darkest nights, and though they were proud to live quietly now, they were not men to be underestimated, nor men to tolerate disrespect. Though they tried always to lead with patience, they ordered breakfast, pancakes, eggs, coffee, nothing fancy, and settled into comfortable conversation about football, about Marcus's students, about Elijah's plans to expand his garage, the kind of everyday talk that felt like a reward after years of war, and for a while, it seemed like it would be an ordinary morning, until the door jangled open again and Officer Darren Cole strode in, his presence souring the room instantly like a drop of vinegar in milk, because Cole was a man everyone knew, a man with a badge too heavy for the integrity he lacked. Broad but going soft around the middle, his hair buzzed short, his jaw perpetually set in a scowl that made him look meaner than he already was, and though he wore the uniform of law, he carried himself with arrogance, puffed-up chest, hand hooked near his holster, his eyes scanning the diner with a sneer as though every soul inside owed him respect, his reputation trailing behind him. Stories of harassing teenagers for fun, shaking down minorities with baseless stops, intimidating anyone who dared cross him, and being quick to escalate situations where calm should have prevailed, but because he wore the badge, many stayed silent, murmuring their disapproval in private but never daring to challenge him outright. Cole's eyes landed on Marcus and Elijah, and something in him seemed to ignite with bitter resentment. Because here were two black men sitting comfortably, laughing, taking up space with confidence, exuding dignity without fear, and to a man like Cole, whose power depended on intimidation, it was intolerable, so he strutted over to their booth, his boots thudding on the tile, his voice dripping with derision as he barked, "What are you two doing here? Don't you know this is a respectable establishment?" And just like that, the diner went quiet, forks froze mid-air, the clink of silverware ceased, the chatter died down, and every pair of eyes turned toward the confrontation, unease settling like fog over the room, because they all knew Cole's temper and cruelty, and though many hated it, few were brave enough to stand up to him, and now he had chosen his targets. Marcus looked up slowly, his dark eyes calm but firm, his voice steady as he said, "We're having breakfast, same as everyone else." But Cole smirked, shaking his head. "Breakfast, huh? I didn't know handouts came with syrup these days," his words laced with venom, drawing uncomfortable shifts from the patrons, a waitress biting her lip to keep from speaking, an old man at the counter muttering under his breath, and Elijah, who had spent years staying composed under fire, leaned back, his gaze cool, his tone low but edged with warning as he said, "You're out of line, officer." But Cole only laughed, loud and ugly, wanting the whole diner to hear, "Out of line? No, I'm keeping order. People like you, always looking for trouble, always pretending to be more than you are," and as he spoke, he reached across the booth, deliberately knocking Marcus's steaming coffee cup, the hot liquid spilling across the table and splashing onto Marcus's hand, making him flinch as the burn bit into his skin, and a collective gasp swept the diner, the tension so thick it felt like the walls themselves held their breath. Elijah's voice cut sharp through the silence, calm but commanding, the tone of a squad leader giving an order, "Walk away, officer." Now, and for the first time, the room recognized something in his tone, something undeniable, the authority of a man who had commanded in war, and yet Cole scoffed, puffing his chest, "What, you think you can tell me what to do? Show me some ID, both of you. Let's see if you even belong here," and with a deliberate sneer he added, "Unless it's fake, like half the garbage you people carry," and that insult, sharp as a blade, drove the air from the room, but Marcus, his face a mask of restraint, slowly reached into his pocket, pulled out his worn leather wallet, and laid it flat on the table, opening it with deliberate calm to reveal his military ID, his VA card, and tucked neatly alongside them, a photograph of his platoon in Afghanistan, himself. Younger, sterner, his uniform crisp, medals gleaming, and Elijah followed suit, pulling his wallet and laying down his medic card, his VA ID, his Silver Star citation laminated for safekeeping, the proof of their service undeniable, tangible, the kind of evidence that should silence any doubt. But Cole only glanced, snorted, and spat, "Fake, all of it, probably bought online," and the insult was so brazen, so shameless, that the diner erupted in murmurs of disbelief, the crowd's patience cracking. But Marcus's patience had cracked too, his hand flexing on the table, his voice a low thunder as he rose from the booth, towering over Cole, his frame commanding, his words measured but heavy with warning. "You've got 10 seconds to step back and take your hand off your weapon, or you'll regret every word you just said," and the diner held its collective breath, time slowing as Cole sneered and tried to shove Marcus back into his seat, but in that instant, Elijah moved, faster than most eyes could follow, his years of training kicking in, his body remembering muscle memory from countless combat drills, and with one precise motion he seized Cole's wrist, twisted it into a painful lock, and had him bent over the table in seconds, his service weapon sliding from his holster and kicked under the booth by Marcus, the entire diner gasping as the arrogant cop cried out in shock and pain, his face pressed against sticky maple syrup, his authority shattered in an instant, and Elijah leaned down, his voice cold, precise, surgical, "You disgrace the uniform you wear," while Marcus loomed above, his voice a quiet storm, "We've faced enemies braver than you, but none more pathetic," and as they released him, shoving him back onto the floor, humiliated, scrambling to recover some shred of dignity, the diner erupted into voices, Hank, the owner, stepping forward, his Vietnam veteran voice booming, "That's enough, Cole. These men bled for this country. You're not fit to polish their boots." And suddenly the tide turned, the patrons who had been silent rose up in anger, condemning Cole, "Shame on you. You're a disgrace. Take off that badge." The chorus growing louder until the walls rattled with the force of it, and then, as though fate itself demanded justice, the door swung open again and 2 senior officers strode in, called by Hank's discreet phone call moments earlier, their eyes taking in the scene, Cole disheveled on the floor, the veteran standing tall, the entire diner watching, and the senior officer, his jaw set with disgust, said the words that fell like a gavel, "Cole, hand over your badge and gun. You're done," and silence fell again as Cole's face twisted in disbelief.